Hey, listen up. Yeah, we here and we locked in. Let's keep it going all the way to the top 10. We feel the turtle, so it's no other option. Fred and Ryan, just watch them. Let's take it to the max. It's the Shell and Tell. They come with all the facts. It's the Shell and Tell. Let's take it to the max. It's the Shell and Tell. They come with all the facts. It's the Shell and Tell.
Welcome back to Shell and Tell. It is game week. We have real live football. Pats hitting the opponents. The Ops are in town. And we got Ahmed Gafir back to talk a little Terps with us before we go down to 4B to party our face off.
Yeah, and obviously, like you said, kick off the season this weekend. Plenty of questions to answer on the offensive side of the ball. I think fans are definitely excited to see how defense looks. So we'll dive into what to see out of Maryland this weekend and what to expect out of UConn.
Yeah, I mean, it starts right at the top. You're replacing a legend. You know, maybe people put him down for not winning the big games, but sure made every game exciting while he was here. We need a new quarterback. We have plenty. You know, we have a depth of quarterbacks that we haven't had in the past, but do we have that top dog? And when are we going to find out?
I think it's going to be a couple days. I think Loxley, he talked about it last week, just really talking about just that quarterback room really being up in the air. And I think he's kind of jokingly, but, been transparent about, Sunday at 5 p.m. meeting this past Sunday. But, yeah, like you said, and between the quarterback and offensive line, Isaac Bunyan is the guy who's really kind of stepped up through fall camp. Well, is he going to be able to hold off Kyle Long? How does that offensive line fare in that first game? So, like you said, lot to answer.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing Isaac Bunyan, a guy that showed off on the defensive line, just flip-flopping over to the starter position in the offense, or at least on the offense. It's fun to see those kind of things. Loxley always looks out for what's best for the players, even at the next level, even if it's not currently for the team. It's always good to see. I'm excited to find out. If anybody got to see the Unlocked they put out last night, I was a little hyped. I thought it was like a Billy announcement video at the beginning because the first 8 minutes were just straight Billy hype and the best throws I've ever seen him make. And I was just like, oh God, is this it? And then they just talked about the rest of the quarterbacks too. So I'm like, oh no, just trolled me completely. Just, but it'll be good to see.
Yeah, I think at this point, fans are just kind of looking forward to seeing, just one who takes that quarterback one rep, and then how it kind of looks. I think fans kind of know what what Billy is, and I think everyone's kind of behind him. It's just how does he kind of take it in, and I think there's still a whole lot of intrigue around MJ Morris, but that Cam Edge, he's still got that pack of people that are really pulling for him.
Yeah, the only thing I am confident in, we have the best third string quarterback we've ever had. That's a fact.
It's again, after the Sean Petty days, I think the Devin Byrne days, I think this is it's a welcome development for fans. And if you don't know those names, then be grateful that you're too young.
Yeah, it was a rough ride there for a middle. You either need to be pretty old to enjoy Maryland Terps football, or just showing up.
That shit built us, to be honest.
Yeah, like you said, offensive line's gonna be a big question, and there honestly are some tests on this UConn team that can kind of push for be problem children. They have Jelani Stafford, 6'1", 300-pound senior D lineman. He's played in 25 games for UConn already. He also is a dual threat, as they use him in kind of the Big Billy role, where they throw him in at fullback and randomly and get the short yardage situations. He had 6 rushing touchdowns for a total 8 yards or something nuts for the whole season last year.
Yeah, and defensive side of the ball for UConn, Price Yates is another guy, that they've got some talent in that front seven. So I think, like you said, just kind of with the Maryland's offensive line, I think it'll be a good first test, and especially going up against that Big Ten opener the week after.
Yeah, that's kind of the scariest point, I think, just because we are so unsure about the offensive line. And as we all have talked about, the offensive line depends on everything. The offensive line is going to depend on whether the quarterbacks have the time to get their shit done. That's going to depend on whether our running backs, so we think we have a legit stable of dudes, can get that first 3 yards they need before they can make their talents show. Because it's hard to work in a box when you're all in there with the big boys, but get him in space, and we got some talent in that backfield.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like you said, just kind of with Roman Hemby, Nolan Ray there, Colby McDonald. I think there's a lot of talent. I think Maryland's obviously talked about the emphasis to run the ball. So I think just again, I think for Roman Hemby, a guy that we kind of talked about, hey, he needs to kind of find ways to make defenders miss in that second level, and then obviously Nolan Ray with that game changing big play ability with that second gear speed. Again, I think this is kind of a chance for Maryland to get its feet wet against some veteran guys. Obviously, UConn has, you mentioned Jelani, Chervin Stroot. He's another guy, defensive end for him. So I think he's another guy coming over from Furman. So again, I think this Maryland defense, or this Maryland running back room has a chance to really get the ground running on the good foot.
Yeah, Nolan Ray is the name for me there. I mean, we know Roman Hemby has played against big time competition and gotten the job done. I'm excited for him. No shade sent that way, but to see what I saw at Nolan Ray in a spring game where it just was like shocking to me. As we talked last time, you were not shocked. You knew the speed was coming. You knew what was going on there on the squad, but just mind blowing type speed in a spring game. To see that against live bullets, against real competition, will be fun to get that outlook for what could be in this season for him.
Yeah, and again, I think just Maryland, that offensive identity this season, I think it's worth repeating. This offense is probably going to look a little bit different than last year. Where a lot of people in the past say, behind Talia, it's a pass first offense. The passing game is never going to be an issue. And I'm not necessarily saying it's going to be an issue this year, but you're probably going to see Maryland try and establish the run a little bit more, set up the the play action, take advantage of the RPOs, try and get the skill players the ball in space immediately. Guys like Ty Felton, Octavian Smith, just get them, like I said, just get them in space, let them make plays, find ways, and then you have the Caden Brate, there's the Shalik Knotts, and even a Leon Houghton type who can really get into that second level and be a deep threat to establish some verticality in the offense. So you do have some options, but again, just kind of think with the concerns about the quarterback and the offensive line. That running back room is really going to be necessary in order for Maryland to have much success this year. And for Maryland, especially, going on the road, they have some of these 50-50 games, at Minnesota, they're going to be able to need to find a ways to run the ball efficiently. And again, I think it's no surprise every single time, even when you ask during media availability about Roman Hemby, about 3 sentences later, Nolan Ray comes back up and says, I think he's going to be a guy that really steps up this year. So not new. I know we just said, Nolan Ray is going to be a guy, but like you said, I think that this is it's a good opponent, obviously, for Maryland to get the ground running. But I think this running back room is really going to have to be as advertised.
Yeah, you mentioned the Shalik Knots, Octavian Smith. That's kind of where the question is. I mean, we know who 1 and 2 is on this team. You got Prather and you got Ty Felton are sitting at your 1 and 2s pretty steadily. Not a ton of push there, but it will be interesting. I know we rotate in a million wide receivers, so maybe we won't know right off the bat, but just to get an idea who the 3 and 4 are, where that wide receiver room stacks up, because I do think there's probably 4 to 5 guys arguing for those 3-4 spots.
Yeah, there would be Ty, Shalik, Octavian, or excuse me, Ty, KP, Octavian. Then you get that 4th wide receiver. It'd be Octavian Smith, where he'd be able to capitalize out of the slot. He's been used as a boundary receiver, outside receiver, as well. When he was underclassman. So I think kind of both those guys really being able to step up and kind of take ownership of kind of being a bigger role, being a focal point of the passing attack. I think for both Octavian Smith, they both showed flashes at times, but I think it's kind of wait and see to see if they can really capitalize, and kind of close that gap between Ty Felton, Caden Breather, and the rest of the room. Where obviously Octavian Smith, I think you can probably make a pretty easy argument that he's the most experienced behind, KP and Ty right there. So think this receiver room, obviously there's a lot of young talent. Ezekiel Abbott, he's a guy starting to put it all together. Sean Williams is a deep threat as well. Braden Wozlowski, he's a guy that he's going to
unlimited speed
all over. Exactly. And then he's he's made his name as a returner as well. I expect him to stick there. Ryan Manning, I think if you saw that practice out in DC in the spring, he came down with a couple pretty contested catches in traffic. Just really good hands, and he's a young guy that really started to put it all together. I think just kind of needed time to put it together physically, whereas he was starting to already grasp it mentally. So I think there's a lot of guys that this is kind of that season where they can build a name for themselves, but outside of Ty and KP, the wide receiver room definitely starts with Octavian Smith and Shalik Knox.
And UConn's got a couple of cornerbacks that have that like Big Ten like size, and Rant Jones and Malik Dixon Williams. Both are 6'1", 200-pound corners, big boys, kind of in that Loxley realm where we like them long and big in those positions. Unlike the past corners have been. Rant was second in the team in tackles, 72 stops. Not really, as we've talked with Maryland in the past, also not great. Your corners are leading in tackles. That's never a good sign. But if he had 44 solo tackles. 2 tackles for a loss and a sack. Also with a forced fumble and a pass breakup last year. Malik, 43 tackles, 22 solo, 2 for a loss, and had another forced fumble and some pass breakups and interceptions. They got some talent back there. The size is the big thing. So it's good to see that our big receivers are at least going to be tested physically like they will be in a few weeks.
Yeah, and they lose some experience as well from last year. So I think obviously like you said, Malcolm Bell's another guy. I believe he played at a school in Connecticut, if memory serves correct. But yeah, obviously, like you said, I think this is kind of very similar to the run game, where I think there's some favorable matchups in the trenches for the run game to really kind of capitalize. I think that this wide receiver room stacks on paper a little bit more favorable than compared to UConn.
Yeah, and so the depth is just unquestionable. But I was shocked when I started digging into UConn that like it wasn't going to be the Towson cakewalks like we've had in the past. That's kind of where my brain was. Maybe I just forgot that like it's still a real school. I just put it as like a actual basketball school, not like you call Maryland a basketball school, but like literally we only look at basketball school.
Future Big 12 school possibly.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like they're stacking their roster here to compete with some bigger boys. So maybe it's possible.
And that's just also a byproduct of the transfer portal. I know we haven't really talked about the offensive side of the ball, but Nick Evers, quarterback from Oklahoma, Wisconsin, who's in the mix. Potentially that starting QB1 going against Maryland. Ja'Kai Green, he's another guy. He played at Maryland, obviously. There's some. It's just the way the portal, the nature. TJ Sheffield, wide receiver from Purdue. So they've got some talent. So it'll be interesting. Not saying UConn's going 6-6 this year, but just yet. So, not a complete walkover.
Yeah, their other quarterback they got is Joey Fagano. It's interesting because you got 2 teams here and you got 5 quarterbacks starting, going for 2 starting positions. I don't think anybody knows what's going on. He was named to the College Sports Communications Comeback Player of the Year award watch list because he got a season-ending injury after 2 games last year. But the reason they still think he is in competition is he came over with offensive coordinator Nick Charlton from Maine, where he posted career highs in passing of 208 passes with 2,200 yards and 15 touchdowns versus only 6 interceptions. So he played a lot with this offensive coordinator. I'm sure that he's in the room beating his chest for him. But when you got a big time transfer like that, it's an open competition, kind of like we're seeing at Maryland.
Yeah, I think Jim Moore going into his second year now. I think he's been a little bit complimentary of Evers as well. So it'll be interesting. I think both those guys kind of pose a threat, and I would lean towards Evers. It kind of seems like just kind of the way that Moore has been talking these last couple of weeks. It seems like he's kind of had a little bit of a leg up, but sounds like it's kind of undecided for now going into this week. So it will be interesting. But again, for this Maryland defense, the cornerback room, Jalen Husky's kind of been as advertised from spring going into fall camp. And then Barry Fisher, he's another guy who's really, stepped up and kind of capitalized on the role that was in front of him going into the spring. And he's kind of capitalized on it. And I think this is really his second chance after the bowl game, really, to prove that he can be a dependable starting quarterback in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, last year their offensive line put in some work. They were, I think, 33rd in rushing in the country. Had 3 linemen make NFL camps this offseason. 2 of them, I believe, were drafted. Another was just an invite. But they do have 2 returning bookend tackles here, and Chase Lunt, Valentin Sen. 6'8" and 6'7" respectively, 305-pound tackles. I mean, this is guys that we're going to be able to get some real work in, some real practice. We're going to see if Mr. Phillips has to be doubled with these boys. He probably still will. He's a monster. But it'll be good to see the individual matchups with dudes that have talent, dudes that have size, and see where their pass rush comes from. Obviously, we lost a big one to Michigan, but we seem to have some guys ready in the wings to make quarterbacks' like days miserable.
Yeah, Ruben Hippolyte, Caleb Wheatland, both those guys leading the inside linebacker room. Daniel Wingate, he's right behind them. Caleb Wheatland. I think both those guys will really round out the linebackers. And linebackers are very similar to the defensive line. You see a lot more rotations there. So I expect Wingate, Mike Harris to see the field a lot. And then right behind them, you have Keyshawn Flowers, Kiari James. Both guys, Keyshawn, I think he does kind of similar to Kellen White a couple years ago. It's just kind of about just kind of getting up to speed, but, playbook, scheme, terminology, a lot of that stuff really translates over from Spalding over to Maryland. So I think, those guys, I think probably more likely that we see a redshirt year kind of going into the season. But yeah, I think, especially between Wingate and Mike Harris, a lot of confidence in that linebacker rotation, inside linebacker rotation, I should say.
Yeah. What questions do you have going into this game? What do you hope to see on the field to kind of iron out for you?
Yeah, obviously, like you talked about, just the quarterback and wide receivers. But I'm really interested to see, just kind of how the wide receivers really do separate themselves, how the passing attack kind of does fare. Is there efficiency? Are they able to really establish much verticality? And also, how vanilla does Maryland keep it going into, especially with the conference opener the week after? I think that'll be kind of interesting. But again, kind of just similar like we talked about. Ty Felton, Caden Prather, been as advertised, if not more, just kind of doing everything on and off the field to really lead with their wide receiver room and the offense as a whole. But again, it's just kind of about closing the gap and getting maybe potentially really that third threat outside of KP and Ty Felton there. So I think this is really that first game. Shalik Knox, I think we've heard a lot about him. We got a chance to see him really increase his snap count in the last third of last season. Spring he was kind of able to splash a little bit as a big performer. And Loxley and Coach Gaddis has really talked about him, saying this is a guy that we can really see breaking out this year. So can he? I think this is kind of that first step. And again, this UConn secondary, I think Knox will have some favorable matchups. So kind of want to see Maryland really take advantage of that.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, all the big ones you already talked about. The offensive line is a big question. See how that works together. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. But the real things that are kind of hidden and not really talked about, it was so nice being able to score 3 points within the 40-yard line last year. Like having a kicker that was dependable, and I'm just not sure we have that this year. We'll have to see. Spring game didn't look great. It was wet. It was, just a one-off type thing and early. So we got some names. We got some people that have hit the transfer portal to come to us. We got some people we've built in-house, but we need somebody that is consistent, at least inside the 30. We just can't be coming up blank on these short, nothing field goals. That's killed us in the past, and that's the difference between wins and losses.
I completely agree with that. And then, I heard Jack Hallis had a really good fall camp, and especially good considering compared to his spring. But Gavin Marshall, he's a transfer from Oklahoma. I think both those guys are really pushing each other, where I think it's more of a 1A, 1B. I don't really think it's more Marshall not being able to do anything. I think it's just How's really being able to step up. But obviously, kicking, that's completely different. But just being able to win the field position battle, Bryce McPherson sounds like he's really been able to do that, where he'll be an asset in both punting and kickoff. So I think that, that special.
And that was the transfer from Notre Dame, right?
Yep. He was the first one. So. So I think the special teams unit definitely became a hot topic through the offseason. So they got some talent in place to be able to take that next step.
Yeah, as always, no punts would be great, but if we do have punts, I'd like to see some good ones. I'd like to see,
I'll take it.
Yep. All right. What are any other questions we're looking at this weekend?
No, again, I think just with UConn's the quarterback room, I think obviously there's talent there. G.J. Sheffield, the wide receiver from Purdue, there. So that passing attack has some potential for big plays. So I think it's just really about that secondary for Maryland. really living up to the expectations. I'm not saying you're not allowed to allow a catch there, but I think this secondary has really been able to quietly answer some of these critics. I think Glenn Miller, he's been consistently talked about as one of the best players on this defense. Jordan Phillips, obviously, I know he would have something to say about that himself. But like I said, Jalen Husky, Perry Fisher, both those guys have been as advertised. And then Dante Trader, I think fans know what they expect out of that veteran. So I think just kind of with so much change in the secondary these last couple of years, and obviously going into this year with a new position coach, I think just kind of being able to shut down UConn's passing attack and kind of make that one dimensional will be an intriguing storyline for me.
Yeah, the defensive backfield and seeing how deep we are. I know we got a couple guys returning, but who's going to step up in the absence of Bo Braid leaving and playing unbelievably for the Ravens? If you don't get a roster spot there, I might have to riot. I know we are deep at that position on the Ravens. I feel like he would be like pushing for a starter spot on a lot of NFL teams, and somehow I'm still sweating that roster spot for the Ravens. But they got to be silly if they don't at least get a draft pick for him at this point.
He's looked great all through preseason. So it's he deserves all the success that's coming his way.
Yeah, I hope he stays there and studies right under Kyle Hamilton. Will be all right.
That would be good fit for him.
All right. Well, we don't have a game to review this week, so probably a little bit tighter 15 here, if you will. But what's the score predictions for this week? What do you see actually happening on the scoreboard? Where can I put my money on DraftKings, Ahmed?
Yeah, I think I haven't actually checked to see what over under is, but I don't know that I'm necessarily going for a world beater. I'm going 31-10 Maryland. I think UConn, garbage time touchdown, second half touchdown, I think is possible. But again, I think that this UConn team, they've got some firepower, but I think if this Maryland team, just the way that they've been talked about, the focus and whatnot, just really don't see them being able to sweat this out this weekend. So I think Maryland is undoubtedly the better team on paper, and I think that they'd be able to match up pretty well. So again, it'll be pretty interesting to see how those 31 points come. I wouldn't be shocked if maybe 3-4 rushing touchdowns, and obviously in my prediction, four touchdowns. So I think 3 rushing touchdowns is very realistic in that case. Probably between Roman Hemby, Nolan Ray, Colby McDonald there. So I think Maryland covers this one. But yeah, I think it'll be a close sweat.
Yeah, you're right there. That 20.5 I last saw on DraftKings. It's been a day or two since I looked. There were no prop bets yet, so I held off. I haven't thrown my money out there. I gotta wait until these names show up for me. That's what I like about this random sports betting. I like to go, Nolan Ray, 400 yards. Let's see how that happens. I'm right there with you. It's hard because we've been used to like putting up points. Like that's what we've been doing. It maybe the defense has gotten better every year, but hasn't quite taken that step. If we want the numbers of wins that we were talking this year, the defense is going to have to step up, because I just can't imagine that you're just picking up right where the most prolific passer in Maryland history is. So, my brain starts, it's UConn. We'll drop 72 on them like we did against Syracuse back in the day. But it's like, no, I don't think we are, because even if you start running away, you're going to be trying out another quarterback. You're going to be trying out another running back, kind of still working things out. So I'd be right there, hopefully in the 30s, like 38-10. I like 10 because I think you hold them to a field goal once early on like a drive where you're getting yelled at by coach. And like you said, just one random guy in the wrong position for a breakaway touchdown. They score 10. So if I can put money on UConn scoring 10, I might have to look that one up, because I feel more confident than that than anything else I've said.
Yeah, I was going bounce between UConn getting 10 or 13 points, but I don't see them being able to get 2 touchdowns or whatnot. But we'll see. Maybe Darrell Robinson's listening and he's looking to shut me up over running back there. So we'll see. But again, I just think this Maryland team, like you said, they should be able to walk away with this one pretty convincingly, and fingers crossed, no injuries.
All right. Well, we're going to keep this thing going. Looks like we're looking at Terp Tuesdays for these Shell and Tell podcasts. So look for us every Tuesday here on Shell and Tell. Hopefully we'll be back with some happy updates next year. break down the absolute domination of your UConn Huskies and moving on to the Big Ten slate one game earlier than I would like to. You got anything else you need to tell the people, Ahmed?
No, looking forward to seeing you guys in the shell this weekend. Likely be swinging by the Old Line tailgate before kickoff. So always a good spot to go to. So yeah, looking forward to being back in the shell this weekend.
Yep. Shout out Ben Page. And until next time, here's to wishing all is well under the shell.